You ever stayed late after class and felt like someone was watching you? These aren't ghost stories. They're real accounts from real students who swear what they saw still haunts them. From mirrors that whisper names to teachers who never left their classrooms. Tonight, you'll hear 6 school horror stories that prove sometimes graduation isn't the end. I used to think ghosts were only in movies until that night in the girls' dormitory at Hillcrest boarding school. It was winter, around 10 p.m., when our dorm supervisor told us to get ready for bed. The hallways were silent, except for the faint hum of the old heater. I shared my room with 3 other girls, Mia, Sarah, and Lila. We'd been gossiping and laughing when the lights flickered once, then twice, and finally went out. The generator kicked in, but something about the room felt wrong. The air turned colder, not like the usual winter chill, but sharp, heavy, like it was pressing against my chest. Mia joked, "Maybe it's the ghost from the mirror," pointing to the tall antique mirror that hung on the wall. We all laughed nervously. That mirror had been there for years, donated by a former headmistress. The seniors always warned us not to stare into it after midnight. At around 12:15 a.m., I woke up to a faint humming sound. It was coming from the mirror. I thought maybe I was dreaming, but when I turned my head, I saw movement. Not a reflection, but something behind the glass. It looked like a girl, her face pale and hair wet, as if she had just stepped out of the rain. She wasn't mimicking my movements. She was staring directly at me. I froze. Then she tilted her head slightly, as if she recognized me. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I whispered Sarah's name, shaking her shoulder, but she didn't wake up. When I looked back at the mirror, the girl was gone. The next morning, I told my friends what I saw. They laughed it off until Mia said, "Wait, you saw her too?" She described the same girl, the wet hair, the hollow eyes, the same stare. That's when we realized this wasn't imagination. That evening, we asked one of the older girls if she knew anything about the mirror. Her face turned pale. She said, "That mirror belonged to Emily Harper, the girl who drowned in the old well behind the gym 10 years ago. Her reflection never left." We thought she was kidding until that night when the humming returned. This time, all 4 of us heard it. The mirror's surface began to ripple like water, and for a split second, we saw a hand press against the glass from the inside. We screamed and ran out, waking up the whole dormitory. The next day, the school removed the mirror. But before they took it away, one of the janitors whispered to me, "You girls were lucky. That mirror's been covered for years, ever since it showed someone who wasn't supposed to be there." I still see that girl sometimes, in reflections, windows, even my phone screen. Every time I do, the glass fogs up, and a small wet handprint appears. When I was in 10th grade, our school, St. Mary's Academy, had one room everyone avoided, room 104. It was always locked, and the teachers never mentioned it. The windows were covered with thick dust, and even during cleaning days, no one went inside. Rumors said a student had died there years ago during detention, but no one knew the truth. One rainy afternoon, our English teacher sent me to fetch an old grammar book from the supply room next to 104. The hallway was dim, lights flickering as thunder echoed outside. I hurried past the locked door, but just as I reached the end of the corridor, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks coming from inside room 104. I froze. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I heard a faint voice. It sounded like a boy whispering, "Please, let me out." My heart pounded so loud I could barely breathe. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of it. The door had no handle from the outside, just a rusted keyhole. Through it, I saw only darkness, but something was moving in there. A shadow pacing back and forth. Suddenly, the door handle rattled violently, as if someone was trying to break out. I ran straight to my classroom, pale and shaking. My teacher scolded me for being late, but when I told her what happened, her face changed. She went silent for a moment, then whispered, "You didn't open that door, did you?" That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing those knocks replaying in my head. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. During lunch, I went back with my friend Daniel. We brought a small flashlight and tried to peek through the crack under the door. The floor inside was covered in dust, but we could clearly see footprints moving back and forth like someone walking in circles. Daniel whispered, "This isn't right. Let's go." But before we could move, a loud bang shook the door. The flashlight flickered and died. Then, through the keyhole, a single pale eye stared back at us. We screamed and ran, dropping the flashlight. Later that day, a janitor found it lying outside room 104, lens cracked, covered in fingerprints. A week later, the principal announced the old wing would be closed for safety reasons. Years later, when I came back as a visitor, I asked one of the teachers about that room. She sighed and said quietly, "In 1998, a student named Jacob was locked inside during detention. The door jammed during a storm. By the time they found him, it was too late. Since then, anyone who walks that corridor claims to hear his voice, still begging to be let out. Even now, when I pass a closed classroom, I can't ignore the sound of soft knocks. 3 of them, always the same. Knock, knock, knock." I've always loved painting. Art class was the only place in school where I felt calm. Until that semester when we were told to paint something that speaks to your soul. It sounded simple enough. Our art room was old, full of dusty canvases from past students, and one giant portrait that hung at the back. A faceless woman in a long black dress. The teachers said it was left unfinished by a student years ago, but nobody knew who painted it. Our art teacher, Ms. Keller, always kept it covered with a sheet. "Some paintings carry too much emotion," she once said. "This one doesn't belong here anymore." One afternoon, I stayed late to finish my project. The school was quiet, sunlight fading through the high windows. I noticed the sheet on the portrait had slipped down halfway, revealing the woman's pale neck and the edge of her black dress. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled the sheet away completely. The woman in the painting was breathtaking but wrong. Her body was detailed, her dress painted with strokes so real it looked like fabric. Yet her face was completely blank, like the artist had never finished it. I stared at it for a long time and then, for a split second, I thought I saw faint outlines where her eyes should be. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the painting. When I returned the next morning, I nearly dropped my bag, because now, there were faint gray eyes on her face. Not drawn, not painted, just appeared, like shadows taking form. I told Ms. Keller, but she dismissed it, saying, "Maybe the light is playing tricks." Still, she looked uneasy and covered the portrait again. Later that week, a few of us dared each other to uncover it again during lunch. When we pulled off the sheet, her eyes were fully painted. Sharp, lifelike, and cold. And this time, she was smiling. We all screamed and covered it back up. But before we left, one of the brushes rolled off the table on its own, smearing black paint across the floor, spelling something like, "Stay." The next morning, Miss Keller didn't come to class. They said she had resigned suddenly and left town. The substitute teacher told us not to touch the portrait again. But that night, I dreamt of the faceless woman standing beside my bed, whispering, "You gave me eyes, now let me see." When I woke up, my hands were covered in dried paint, black and gray. I haven't painted since that day. And sometimes, when I pass the old art room, I swear I can hear the soft sound of a brush on canvas, painting something that shouldn't exist. Every school has that one place no one talks about. For us, it was the basement beneath the main building of Ridgeway High. Most students didn't even know there was a basement. The old staircase was sealed with a rusty metal door, bolted shut, covered in "Do Not Enter" signs. We were told it used to be a storage area decades ago, before the flood. Rumors said a janitor died down there when a pipe burst, and since then, the school kept it locked for safety reasons. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when you're 17 and bored after detention. That's how it started. It was a Friday evening, and only 3 of us were left in the building, me, my friend Aaron, and the detention supervisor, Mr. Hughes. The power had gone out during a storm, and while Hughes went to check the fuse box, Aaron whispered, "Let's go look at the basement door." I wanted to say no, but something about the dark hallways made me feel like we weren't alone anyway. When we reached the end of the corridor, the flickering emergency light cast shadows across the wall. The metal door looked older than the building itself, its surface stained with rust and fingerprints. Aaron tugged the latch. It didn't move, but then we both froze. Bang, bang, bang. 3 loud knocks came from the other side, slow, deliberate, almost like someone knew we were there. "Mr. Hughes," Aaron whispered, but I knew that wasn't him. The knocks were coming from beneath the floor. Then came the whisper, a soft, trembling voice, a woman's, echoing through the door. "Help me. It's so dark." I felt my stomach twist. The air smelled like mold and something metallic like old blood. Aaron stumbled back, muttering, "It's a joke. Someone's down there." But when we leaned close, the whisper turned into a scream, raw, desperate, and so loud it made the lights above us flicker out completely. Mr. Hughes came running, flashlight in hand, shouting at us to step back. He looked pale when he saw the door. Without saying a word, he forced us out of the hallway and locked it again with a padlock. The next Monday, he didn't come to school. We heard he'd quit suddenly and moved away. A few months later, during renovations, workers opened the basement to inspect it for the first time in years. They found nothing but a single wooden chair, chained to the floor, and deep scratches all over the walls. Now, every time there's thunder, teachers say the metal door rattles by itself. And if you walk close enough, you can still hear that same voice whispering through the cracks. "Please, don't lock me in again." I never believed in ghosts, not until the night my best friend disappeared. Her name was Clara, and we were both library assistants at a small private school in northern England. The library was ancient, built long before the main building, with carved oak shelves, a spiral staircase, and a restricted section in the back that even teachers avoided. Rumor said the section was sealed after a fire decades ago. But the weird thing was, every once in a while we'd hear footsteps coming from there, even though it had no entrance anymore. Started one Tuesday evening. We were sorting old books when Clara found a thick, dusty journal tucked behind a row of encyclopedias. It had a cracked leather cover, no title, only a faint name inside, Margaret Ainsley, 1913. She laughed, saying, "Maybe it's a ghost diary," and flipped it open, but the pages were odd. Most were blank except the last few, written in messy handwriting that said, "The voices won't stop. They're calling my name through the shelves. If I disappear, look behind the false wall." That night, I went home, but Clara stayed behind. She wanted to just check something before locking up. The next morning, she didn't show up for class. The librarian said she must have left early, but I knew something was wrong. Her backpack was still by the desk. The police searched the building for days, but there was no trace of her. Then, a week later, the janitor reported hearing whispers from the restricted section. When the headmaster finally ordered the wall inspected, they found something none of us could explain. Behind the old bookshelf, there was a false wall, a hollow space about 6 feet deep. Inside were scorched books, fragments of burnt wood, and an old wooden chair. And on the dusty floor was the leather journal, open to a new page. The ink was still fresh. It said, "I found her." They sealed the section again. No one was allowed near it after that. But every year, around the same date Clara vanished, the library alarm goes off at exactly 8:17 p.m., the time she sent her last text. I can hear her calling my name. I graduated the next year, but sometimes I go back to visit. The librarian always tells me the same thing, that late at night, one chair by the window rocks on its own. And occasionally, a book falls from the shelf and lands open on that same page. Look behind the false wall. I don't go near that section anymore. But sometimes, when I sit down to read, I feel someone standing behind me, breathing softly, as if reading over my shoulder. Every school has ghosts, some seen, some remembered only in whispers. But at Westbridge High, the scariest story wasn't about a haunted room or a cursed mirror. It was about Mr. Dawson, our history teacher. He'd been teaching there for more than 20 years, quiet, polite, and always the first to arrive and the last to leave. He knew everything about the school's past. Too much, some said. During my last semester, strange things started happening in his classroom. The bell would ring on its own long after everyone had left. Old exam papers fluttered off the shelves without any breeze. And sometimes the projector turned on by itself, flashing an image. Not slides, but an empty classroom from decades ago. One afternoon, I stayed behind to finish an essay. Mr. Dawson was sitting at his desk, staring at an old photo album. He didn't notice me at first. When I asked what it was, he hesitated before saying, "Just some old students. Before the fire." I leaned closer and saw a black and white photo of a group of kids standing outside the same classroom. But something was off. The walls behind them were burned, and at the edge of the picture stood a faint figure of a man, half faded like a shadow burned into the film. "Who's that?" I asked. Mr. Dawson looked at me sharply. Then he closed the album and said quietly, "Someone who never left." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, I went early to class, but Mr. Dawson wasn't there. Instead, the door was locked, and a piece of chalk had written across the board, "He's still teaching." The principal said Mr. Dawson hadn't come in that day, but no one had written on that board. The classroom had been empty since the night before. Over the next week, students started hearing his voice through the intercom, calling names, giving instructions, even though the system had been disconnected for maintenance. The janitor said he saw someone sitting alone in the dark classroom after hours, wearing the same brown jacket Mr. Dawson always wore. 2 weeks later, we got the news. Mr. Dawson had died suddenly. In his sleep. The time of death? 8:17 p.m. That evening, the final bell at school rang 3 times, even though classes were already over. Teachers said it was a glitch. But when we checked the security cameras, the footage showed the door to his classroom opening on its own. Inside, the lights flickered, and at the front of the room, faintly visible, was a man writing something on the board. The words were simple, written in white chalk. "Class dismissed." Now, every year on the anniversary of his death, the final bell rings once more, long after everyone's gone home. And if you stand in the empty hallway, you can still hear his calm voice echoing from the classroom. "Take your seats. History never ends."